I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My first question is for the Honorable Minister of Build. Could the Honorable Minister of Build tell this Honorable House what the reason is for uncovering the old Bellem Bridge?
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Build. You need to put your mic on.
Madam Speaker, the uncovering of the old Bellem Bridge is not a project which resides with the Ministry of Build. We have not. I think I had the other question before, but I'll leave it at that. This is from the September sitting. You want?
I think that might have been a mix-up, you know.
He said he wanted it back.
No, he did not say that. He did not say that. We're following the addendum for today.
Okay. I'll just stay.
Honorable Romeo, we are following the addendum for today. On the addendum? No, Honorable Romeo, I'm saying to you that we are following the addendum. So the addendum has the questions.
Madam Speaker, the addendum only has the questions.
Right.
What was emailed to me are the questions and answers that I'm using. That's what I'm reading from.
So I'm asking
questions
you,
and answers.
The answers that you got might have been a mix-up. There was a mix-up with the responses that were circulated. This question, it was announced that the cost of travel. Sorry, that is to the Premier. So there is no question to build.
But Madam Speaker, she would have the questions and the answers she's referring to. So that would be more orderly.
You sent the addendum? When?
That don't mean nothing.
Okay, Honorable Romeo, the addendum was just sent to you. So could you check for it, please?
Madam Speaker, I am looking at it. But remember, she's going to be answering the questions in order that they were given, that was sent to me.
Honorable Romeo, we are dealing with the addendum for today, the 11th of November, 2025. I'm saying to you that any other response that was circulated was an error.
Okay. I'm trying to find.
So only those questions that are have been. And looking at the addendum, there seems that there are no questions to the Minister of Build. For today?
Okay, Madam Speaker, I guess somebody made an error, so I will ask the questions to the Honorable Osborne, the Minister of Lands, Housing. Can the Honorable Minister of Lands and Housing tell this Honorable House what the size of land that was allocated by the Government of Montserrat for the playground in Little Bay is, and what provision for sitting and shade for children and adults supervising is being considered?
Honorable Romeo, I said that we are dealing with the addendum for today, and that is not a question on the addendum. There are two questions for the Minister of Agriculture on the addendum, and that is not one of them. Honorable Osborne, do you have a response to that question, and are you willing to answer it today?
Sure, Madam Speaker.
Okay, let's proceed with that then.
Should I proceed, Madam Speaker?
Yes, proceed.
Madam Speaker, the size of land allocated by the government of Montserrat for the playground in Little Bay is estimated at 0.36 acres, which is approximately 15,642.3 square feet. The official handover and opening of the King Charles III playground to the government of Montserrat occurred on September 16th of this year. The Department of Community, Youth and Sports Services will collaborate with interest groups both on island and in the diaspora to secure facilities for seating, shading in the playground, and also other amenities. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
I'll stick to the questions on the addendum. Can the Honourable Minister tell this Honourable House the source of funds for the Gerald's single-bedroom apartment complex being built at present, and whether new funding has been gotten for the said project since the United Alliance government has come into office?
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the government of Montserrat is constructing an apartment building consisting of 4 one-bedroom units in Drummond. So just a correction from Gerald that was in the question. The government of Montserrat secured funding in the amount of EC 1.5 million under the CIPREG addendum program for the development of infrastructure and the construction of these units. Madam Speaker, the ministry has reviewed the proposed development plan for the area and has adjusted that plan to include the construction of multi-story housing units instead of single-floor units on each of the lots in development. This approach will increase the carrying capacity of the site and allow for additional housing. The plan is to build out phase 1 of Drummond's. To this end, a new spend proposal has been developed and with cost estimates to carry out this proposed build-out. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
I'll ask my next question and I'll allow the Minister to tell me if he's willing for me to answer the other ask the other questions. Could the Honourable Minister of Housing tell this Honourable House who is responsible for ensuring the government-built T111 and 410 houses built in Davy Hill, Lookout and elsewhere?
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, 9 410 properties located in Lookout remain in the government housing stock, for which annual premiums are paid. Madam Speaker, no T111 are insured by the government of Montserrat. Private homeowners of 410 properties are responsible for their own policy should they need to, and as may be required by a bank or wish to have their properties insured.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
Yes, and I'll ask the other questions he's willing to answer. After the flooding in the Casbah area, several businesses were relocated. Can the Honourable Minister tell this Honourable House whether and how each of those businesses was compensated and whether they are fully and satisfactorily repositioned to conduct their usual business activities? Sorry.
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Agriculture.
Madam Speaker, the Business, Trade and Investment Unit partnered with the Ministry of Malias to conduct assessments with 5 affected vendors to understand their needs and impacts. Subsequently, Madam Speaker, The BTI unit proposed a transformative solution to relocate these vendors to a new food court to support their recovery. In summary, Madam Speaker, the initiative under consideration is intended to address vendor needs through potential financial support, food safety training, and marketing assistance, aiming to retain existing jobs, creation of new employment opportunities, along with an overall enhancement of tourism and cultural exchange.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My next question is for the Honourable Minister of Finance and Economic Management. It was announced that the cost of travel via Winair's Twin Otter between Antigua and Montserrat will be $93, excluding taxes. Could the Honourable Premier tell this Honourable House, A, how much SVG and Fly Montserrat will cost during the same period? B, how much each of the three airlines will be subsidized during that same period? And C, is there a difference between price? If there's a difference between prices and subsidies, explain in detail why. B is how much each of the three airlines will be subsidized during the same period. He wants to hear C again. C says, if there's a difference between prices and subsidies, explain in detail why.
I recognize the Honorable Premier.
Sorry, Madam Speaker, I didn't realize you was asking all parts of the questions, which is what confused me. In response to A, Madam Speaker, SVG BMN Air has indicated, and I stress indicated, that their return pricing will be approximately 810 EC dollars. And everything I'm giving will be in EC dollars. That's our currency. Fly Montserrat has approximately 2,000 return seats, which will be negotiated at a price cap of $755. In response to B, Madam Speaker, the three incumbent airlines are contracted for operational support on an annual basis. While the precise details concerning the variations in ticketing prices, operational costs for peak period support are intricate and complex, I can provide the total allocated for the current fiscal year. The annual operating support being provided to each carrier is as follows. Fly Montserrat, $1.8 million. SVG Air, BMN Air, $2.1 million. Winair, $2.3 million. These figures represent the overall operational support allocated for the year to ensure continuity and frequency of service. In response to C, Madam Speaker, I will address the honourable member's query regarding the differences between airfares and operational support. Airfares are negotiated separately from operational support. It would be impractical and counterproductive to attempt to negotiate both components simultaneously with all three competing airlines in the same setting. The airfare pricing structure established by each airline is primarily influenced by their commercial pricing models and the average passenger traffic they anticipate. Conversely, Madam Speaker, the operational support provided by the government is determined based on factors critical to service delivery, such as equipment type, the cost of operating and maintaining the specific aircraft utilized by each carrier. And may I just add, if you're using Twin Otters, it's a more expensive aircraft to operate than the islanders. Schedule requirements, the need to maintain a reliable and consistent flight schedule, including maintaining services during off-peak periods when commercial viability is low. Our negotiation team worked diligently to balance the goal of achieving competitive passenger pricing with the necessity of providing sufficient operational support. This ensures that the airlines receive the requisite assistance to maintain a high-impact travel service for the public while striving for similar affordable fares where commercially viable.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. A supplemental, please, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the general public and myself, I'm very happy with the improvements with access, especially with the Twin Otter. However, from my calculations, it seems that all prices will be over $700 if you include taxes, depending on where you're traveling to and how long you stay in Antigua. From what I remember, the British government in the FCDO's business case said clearly that one of the reasons why we are not going to grow out of dependency is because of the high cost of airfares, of access into Montserrat. How then are we going to address this high cost, which restricts the ordinary man from traveling, people who want medical care from traveling, tourists from traveling? How are we going to address this high cost of airfare?
I recognize the Honorable Premier.
Madam Speaker, one has got to look at several factors here. What is the budget allocation that has been ring-fenced for access? And we have to work within that ring-fence sum. Secondly, we expect the airlines to operate at a profit, so therefore their fares will reflect their operating cost to include profit, taking into account the subsidies and the operational support which they receive. We are currently looking at the possibility of having a ferry service included. And I say possibility because I'm still awaiting word from the public service as it relates to the tender for the ferry, and that will provide an additional mode of transportation which hopefully will be less costly than air traffic. So far, Madam Speaker, we have not had any significant concerns as it relates to the price for travel. And thirdly, Madam Speaker, when you're looking at the cost, and these costs also include airport charges and taxes, and those are substantial depending on which destination is being covered.
Recognize the Honorable Romeo.
I would have liked to ask a further supplemental because there
Not
were about
today.
4 questions.
Not
asked.
today.
What's that?
But not today.
Okay. I had asked 4 questions. Well, that's okay.
Honorable Romeo.
It's okay with 4 sections, but I thought, okay. That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. Can the Honourable Minister for Access tell this Honourable House what the estimated cost associated with his government's declared plans for the idea of extending the runway at the John A. Osborne Airport is, and who the philanthropist was who had agreed to fund the said airport extension project?
I recognize the Honorable Premier.
Madam Speaker, I am truly unsure of what the honourable member is hoping to hear as a substantive response to these questions. Suffice to say, there is no declared idea or plan of extending the runway at this time at the John Osborne Airport. As it relates to the philanthropists, I am absolutely clueless as to who the philanthropist he's referring to.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My next question. Can the Honorable Premier tell this Honorable House the cost of keeping the Tamil prisoner that his government agreed to keep in Her Majesty's prison, Montserrat, during the past month of September 2025?
I recognize the Honorable Premier. Your mic, Honorable Romeo.
Madam Speaker, as per the terms of the February 2025 Memorandum of Understanding between the Government of Montserrat and the Government of the United Kingdom, the UK government covers the cost of the prisoner's incarceration, as well as providing additional support for the wider prison population and enhancing the infrastructure of His Majesty's prison at Braids. The costs related to the said matter are borne directly by HMG and do not fall within the remit of the budget of this government. As a consequence, I have no idea how much HMG is spending, and neither will I ask them.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
Yes, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker. My next question is for the Honourable Minister of Health and Social Services. Correct. Access to basic health care is a public right and an obligation of the state under the Public Health Act. However, recent experiences at the public dental clinic suggest that the current legal framework and administrative practice exclude many citizens from essential dental services. This raises concerns about equity and affordability within a publicly funded health system. Will the Honourable Minister of Health and Social Services state, A, whether the Public Health Act or any subsidiary regulations restrict access to government dental services to specific categories of persons, and if so, the legal or policy basis for such restriction?
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm going to read a response from the dental lead at the dental clinic, but just to summarize prior to that and say the Public Health Act is very vague. It doesn't specify anything much to do with dental care, and the Act itself needs a major upgrade. Also, there are not specific policies that relate to this that I can be guided by, although Dr. Fergus herself, the lead at the dental clinic, has recently written some guidance on how how emergencies could be managed. But the responses as such as submitted to legislature. The existing administrative policy governing public dental services provides for free dental care only. At present, there is no mechanism in place for cost recovery or fee payment for persons who fall outside the defined eligible categories. As a result, free dental services are currently provided for the following groups: children, pregnant women, persons over the age of 60, police officers, prison officers, embodied Royal Montserrat Defence Force personnel, healthcare workers, persons with disabilities, the indigent, mentally challenged persons. The policy approach was established to prioritize preventative and essential dental care for vulnerable and high-need groups within limits of available public resources. The Ministry acknowledges that this arrangement, while consistent with existing administrative policy, has led to concerns about access and equity for persons outside these groups. The Ministry is currently reviewing other options for broadening access and, where feasible, introducing a sustainable payment or cost recovery mechanism that would allow other residents to access dental services at the public clinic without compromising service quality or priority care for the most vulnerable. So I think it's trying to say that at the moment we're catering to the most vulnerable, although there are sort of policy directives, they're not specifically written down, and certainly the Public Health Act does not specify, although there is some obvious promise there for discussion and potential flexibility with service provision.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
And the next section of the question asks whether the ministry considers basic dental care, including emergency pain management, extraction, and infection control, an essential health service that should be accessible to all residents, irrespective of age, gender, or employment status.
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So the response I'm going to read is again from the dental team, just to say that absolutely yes, we recognize the importance of the need for emergency dental care. I think these questions originate from an episode where there were major staffing issues. At any rate, the Ministry of Health and Social Services recognizes that oral health is an integral component of overall health and well-being. Dental conditions such as pain, infection, and tooth loss can have significant impacts on quality of life and general health outcomes. Emergency pain management, extractions, and acute dental infection can be classified as essential health services. It is important to note that the government dental clinic does provide emergency care to any person in need, including those who do not fall within the stated free service categories. As stated earlier, free dental services are provided to certain categories of persons, namely children, pregnant women, etc. However, the ministry fully acknowledges that other residents may also require access to essential dental care, particularly in emergency situations. The ministry is reviewing its service delivery arrangements and policy framework to have a more formal system in place to ensure that no one is denied essential dental treatment for reasons of eligibility and affordability, especially where urgent care or infection is concerned. If I could just add 2 seconds to that, Madam Speaker. You know, if you look at other areas in Anguilla, dental care is not free for all, whereas in the BVI, they have a national health insurance, so everybody can access dental care. In the UK, although there are public dentists and private dentists, you know, it is a huge struggle to get in to see a government dentist, an NHS dentist, so you will end up with major problems if you had to wait on an NHS dentist only. So for me, the Montserrat situation is not necessarily ideal, but at the very least, we should be able to target emergencies, and I'm hoping that as we go forward, there can be some flexibility in terms of welcoming in other groups. For example, I like to talk about improving access to healthcare for teachers who are underpaid and are essential workers. I'd love to see policy changing to include them, and there is some appetite in dental for this, but it's going to involve adjustments to funding, equipment, and staffing.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
And the next section to the question asks whether the ministry intends to review and amend the Public Health Act and accompanying regulations to provide for universal access to emergency dental care. Sorry.
Recognize the Honorable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Public Health Act needs a major overhaul. It is obsessed with potable water and the slaughter of animals, and it, for example, mentions diabetes and hypertension only one time. So a lot of work has to be done on the Public Health Act, and we're hoping that we can start this over the year ahead. The response from the dental team. The Department of Dental Services has submitted a proposal recommending the introduction of a structured system that would allow persons outside the stated fee category to access dental care on a fee-paying basis. This proposal is currently under internal review and will inform future policy decisions on how best to ensure equitable access to urgent dental treatment while maintaining the sustainability of a public dental service. So I think the answer is, from a policy point of view, they're already trying to address it, but obviously from the Public Health Act itself, major work needs to be done.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
Thank you. And the last section of the question asks, what interim measures the ministry will put in place to ensure that no citizen is denied basic dental care in a public facility on the basis of legal interpretation or administrative discretion?
Recognize the Honorable Minister of Health.
Very fancy and complicated question that, but the answer is that persons are referred to the Casualty Department for emergency care. while the ministry reviews the proposal and secures the necessary resources to be able to expand services to persons outside the previously stated fee-paying category. So emergency physicians can manage certain dental emergencies, like the beginnings of a dental abscess, some aspects of dental pain control. And I know of cases where dentists have had to show up at the Glendon casualty to intervene in an emergency. But I hear you loud and clear in terms of wanting to secure access to emergency dental care for ordinary citizens who are not included in the non-fee paying category, and to, from my point of view, to improve access to dental care in general on Ireland for persons on Montserrat.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
A supplemental, please, Madam Speaker. If I'm correct, there are people who experience difficulty getting access after working hours, on the weekends, holidays, and it could be children, adults, you name it, whether they can pay or not, there's little access. Would the government consider providing an extra subsidy to the private clinic to make sure those hours and urgent
Honorable
needs?
Romeo, that is a completely new introduction to the question.
The question asks, what measures will be put in place, Madam Speaker, to ensure that no citizen is denied basic dental care in a public facility? So I'm just asking her.
Okay, can I have a moment, please? The rules say that the supplementary should be based on the response that is given when you're seeking clarification to the response. Are you seeking clarification to the response with that question?
Madam Speaker, you said it should be based on the response, and of course I'm seeking clarity as to whether the government is willing to go that far. But if you don't want the question asked, I'll move on.
No, I think it's a completely new question. And I noticed,
I'll move on.
Just a minute. I noticed that it has been happening, and I've been fairly lenient with it, but it is against what the rules stipulate. It should be based on the information provided in the question that you're seeking clarity on. Let's move on. I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
My next question, Madam Speaker. Could the Honourable Minister tell this Honourable House how many persons have applied or were considered to get medical care on the NHS Government of Montserrat 10-quota medical scheme since the last sitting of the House, and whether they were successful or not, and if not, why not?
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Since the last sitting of this Honourable House, the Ministry has received 4 applications for quota referral. 3 are being processed by the CMO, and 1 was rejected by the CMO.
Recognize the Honorable Romeo.
Madam Speaker, supplemented. Did you tell us why that case was rejected?
Recognize the Honorable Minister of Health.
From my understanding, it was felt that because the person had traveled for medical care, that they were no longer a resident of Montserrat, which I disagree with.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My next question. Could the Honourable Minister of Health tell this Honourable House whether emergency health care is free, and if not, what the cost is for emergency health care?
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So my response needs tweaking. So for persons in the non-fee paying category, police, fire, health, children, persons over 60 who are Montserratian healthcare is free. Apart from that, the fee at Glendon is 25 EC dollars for consultation, the cheapest emergency medicine consultation in the world, other than areas where it is actually fully free, like the NHS. $100 to $300 for lab investigations, $30+ for each individual X-ray, and 900 EC dollars for each individual CT scan with contrast. These fees should have been the same regardless of nationality since September 1st as requested by Cabinet. But apparently administrative delays have led to a delay in equalizing access to health care. But we expect that this will soon be sorted out. If the emergency warrants medical evacuation, then the cost of care is obviously very much higher and would be directly related to the cost of the medical evacuation and the cost of the intervention required abroad. The cost of the medical evacuation will depend directly on the distance away from the receiving facility that we are, because distance equals time, and if it doesn't, it equals speed, which equals money, and the type of aircraft required. So if we used our local aircraft, obviously it would be much cheaper than if we were using a commercial medevac craft.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My next question. Could the Honourable Minister tell this Honourable House the grounds on which emergency health care can be denied to a citizen, resident, or visitor in Montserrat?
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think the answer is there are no circumstances, but let me find the actual response. Emergency health care on island is never denied to any citizen, resident, or visitor of Montserrat. Emergency health care on Montserrat is accessible to all at the Casualty Department of the Glendon Hospital, soon to be renamed.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Can the Honourable Minister tell this Honourable House who is responsible for providing medevac services during the daytime and the nighttime to citizens, residents, and visitors who become extremely ill at night and need to be medevaced off island for specialist care unavailable on Montserrat?
Recognize the Honorable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Ministry of Health and Social Services is responsible for contracting medical evacuation services once a patient is determined to require such a service. Unfortunately, medevacs still can only occur during the operational hours of the John A. Osborne Airport, which is 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. The government, through the Ministry of Built and also the Governor's Office, are both actively reviewing nighttime protocols for the airport, and this will include how it relates to medical evacuation.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Next question. Can the Honourable Minister tell this Honourable House if there is any circumstance under which medevacs have or may be carried out at night?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Medical evacuations are not permitted at night. It's important that as we go forward in planning, that we do not create a disparity in healthcare access, allowing some persons to be flown out at night if considered more important than other persons. So what we do regarding night flying should be straight across the board. What is good for one citizen is good for all, or one person on this island is good for all. Therefore, our efforts to improve what we're doing in terms of medevac and being able to medevac persons at night, the solutions should be available to every human on this island. So we anxiously await the completed study and the interventions, and in the meantime, Guadeloupe has a military helicopter that is able to respond in the most extreme of conditions. And it is important that the Ministry of Health is proactive in this regard, considering that any minute now we may have a serious condition that needs to be flown out. For example, visiting ministers from other countries, investors. What do we do in situations like that? We cannot say, sorry, it is 8 p.m., you need to get to the tertiary center right now, but we are unable to get you out until 6 a.m. So we need to be perhaps a little bit more proactive in how we're going to address situations as we continue on waiting for the night flying solution, to ensure that we're not panicking when critical emergencies occur, because emergencies occur generally at the wrong time.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, that is a very serious answer, honest, but very serious. So I must ask a supplemental, Madam Speaker. How long have we been waiting for this study to be done? And how much longer should we wait? And should cost, or I don't know what, prevent a decision being made to provide medivacs at night, half of the year, from sunset to sunrise?
The question is?
The question is, how long have we been waiting for the studies to be done, and how much longer you anticipate, or you've been told, the studies will take before a decision can be made whether to provide night landing or not?
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Health.
Madam Speaker, please let Honorable Romeo know that this job in its entirety is a waiting game. I think we have been waiting since the beginning of the year for the completion of these studies. I remain hopeful. The reality is, Madam Speaker, that at any moment somebody could have a major heart attack or a stroke on this island, or there could be a major trauma. We live on an island where 20% of people here are diabetic and 30 to 50% of them are hypertensive, not to mention the borderline persons who are also at increased risk. We have an aging population. Caribbean studies have shown that 60% of persons over the age of 60 are diabetic and hypertensive and are at very high risk for stroke, heart attack, etc. You know, our roads are as such, our driving is as such, we're at risk of major trauma on this island. I am becoming more and more a patient woman, Madam Speaker. I'm assuming I may be waiting for 4 more years.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
And my last question to the Honourable Minister. Can the Honourable Minister tell this Honourable House whether, apart from her responses in the Assembly, her ministry has informed the public that there is no provision of medevac services during the night to citizens, residents, and visitors who become extremely ill at night and need to be medevaced off island for specialist care unavailable in Montserrat?
Recognize the Honorable Minister of Health.
Madam Speaker, I graduated from med school in 1999, and I only recall one person being flown out at night since then. So this includes the period of the honorable members' leadership of government during which night flying was not possible. I question whether or not he informed the public then. But the answer is, during my various attempts at campaigning over the last 11 years, I have repeated and repeated the fact that from 6 p.m. in the evening till 6 a.m., all of us and our relatives and friends here are trapped on this island. And the clear message is, number one, yes, we need to sort out night flying, but number two, we need to sort out how we deal with significant medical cases on Montserrat.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
And a supplemental, please, Madam Speaker. 2 sections of my supplemental. Aren't you happy that there's an opposition that challenges you to get this done? I wish I had one. And Honourable Minister, your answers have been very frank and quite different to the answer given in the UK Parliament just last week on the same matter. Would you mind if I share your answer with the UK Parliament so that they become aware of what's really happening on Montserrat?
Honorable Romeo, I don't think that's a supplementary fitting for the question.
Can I
though.
answer the first question, Madam Speaker?
No, Honorable Minister. No.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. No further questions.
No further questions at all? That's the end of your questions? It seems so, yeah.
Motions.
I recognize the Honorable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move a motion for the first reading of the Bank Interest Levy Amendment Bill 2025.
Do you have a seconder?
Madam
I
Speaker,
recognize the Honorable Minister of Build.
Madam Speaker, I rise to second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Bank Interest Levy Amendment Bill 2025, that it should be read a first time. All those in favor say aye. Those against, nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The bill will be read a first time.
Bank Interest Levy Amendment Bill 2025.
The bill has been read a first time. Go on.
You just lock up.
I recognize the Honorable Premier.
Madam Speaker, I rise to move a motion for the first reading of the Eastern Caribbean Asset Management Corporation Agreement Amendment Bill 2025.
Can someone second the motion? I recognize the Honorable Minister of Build.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to second the motion for the first reading of the Eastern Caribbean Asset Management Corporation Agreement Amendment Bill 2025.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Eastern Caribbean Assessed Management Corporation Agreement Amendment Bill 2025 should be read a first time. Those in favor say aye. Those against, nay. The ayes have it. The bill will be read a first time.
Eastern Caribbean Asset Management Corporation Agreement Amendment Bill 2025.
I recognize the Honorable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to move a motion for the Hotel Tax Amendment Bill 2025.
And what is the motion for? To be read a first time?
Madam Speaker, I rise to move a motion for the first reading of the Hotel Tax Amendment Bill 2025.
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Agriculture.
Madam Speaker, I rise to second the motion for the first reading of the Hotel Tax Amendment Bill 2025.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Hotels Tax Amendment Bill 2025 should be read a first time. Those in favor, say aye. Those in favor, say aye. Those against, nay. The ayes have it. The bill will be read a first time.
Hotel Tax Amendment Bill 2025.
I recognize the Honorable Premier.
Madam Speaker, I rise to move a motion for the mined aggregate export bill for the first reading of the mined aggregate export duty bill 2025.
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Agriculture.
Madam Speaker, I rise to second the motion for the first reading of the mined aggregate export bill 2025.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Mined Aggregate Export Duty Bill 2025 should be read a first time. All those in favor say aye. Those against, nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The bill will be read a first time.
Mined Aggregate Export Duty Bill 2025.
I recognize the Honorable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to move a motion for the first reading of the Supplementary Appropriation 2025 number 2 bill.
I recognize the Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Speaker, I rise to second the motion for the first reading of the Supplementary Appropriation Bill 2025 number 2.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Supplementary Appropriation 2025 number 2 bill be read a first time. Those in favor say aye. Those against, nay. The ayes have it. The bill will be read a first time.
Supplementary Appropriation 2025 number 2 bill.
I recognize the Honorable Premier.
Madam Speaker, I rise to move a motion for the second reading of the Supplementary Appropriation number 2 bill of 2025. And Madam Speaker, with your consent, may I provide some details of the bill before it's seconded?
Sure, you may go on.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, under the supply votes, we're seeking to have an additional $10.5 million approved, and these increases are as follows. On the vote 05, Royal Montserrat Police Service, a total amount of $985,700 is required for Program 051 to cover additional operational costs. The UK government will refund these expenses under a recently signed Memorandum of Understanding. Okay, so I want to just go over that again. The UK government will fund the expenses which I'm going to enumerate. To approve expenditure of $377,000 on the professional services and fees to continue the work of the Director of Business Change on the multi-agency safeguarding hub project. These funds were agreed to be provided by the FCDO directly to the RMPS to engage with Salterton Associates directly, ensuring continuity of this critical project. We are also seeking to approve expenditure of $46,000 on the professional services and fees to cover the cost of derelict vehicle removal initiative, for which funds were allocated outside of the RMPS budget. The exercise has been completed, and the RMPS will then receive a reimbursement of the funds which they spent on our behalf. To approve expenditure of $210,000 professional service and fees to cover costs associated with the construction of a new safeguarding hub and the engagement of a financial investigator trainer. To approve an increase of $613,000 on the furniture and equipment to fund equipment purchases relating to the outfitting of the safeguarding hub. And this includes medical and digital equipment to include soundproofing material. And it also includes, not under the safeguarding hub, but under that same head, firearm equipment. So I don't want anyone to get the feeling that under the safeguarding hub, that the firearm equipment is a requirement for the safeguarding hub. Approval of expenditure of $130,000, training to fund a critical leadership and management program for senior officers. This is designed to equip our senior leadership with essential skills needed to elevate the operational effectiveness and strategic direction of the Royal Montserrat Police Service. And Madam Speaker, we'd recognize as well that over recent months, many young police officers, and young here is relative, given my own age, that they in fact have been promoted, but of course they would need to have their skills upgraded, and this is well received. On the vote 15, Office of the Premier, an amount of $5 million is required to cover the remaining commitments for fiscal 2005-2026. Funds will be facilitated through the current fiscal space. This includes Program 153, grants and contributions. The budget was significantly reduced over the years, and the additional sum of $2 million will allow the government of Montserrat to meet these obligations for the remainder of the fiscal year. And I will give an indication of what those sums are later on in the proceedings. Or would you like to have them now? Madam Speaker, we are accustomed to having Montserrat as one of the associations or one of the member territories of CARICOM that pays its debts and pays them on time. But unfortunately, Madam Speaker, over the years, there seem to have been some lapse, and we're seeking to cover those lapses. Caribbean Development Bank, $1.19 million, that's their raise. CARICOM Electoral Observer Mission, $53,000. CARICOM Secretariat, $17,000. Sorry, did I say 53 million? 53,000. CARICOM Secretariat, $17,000. Department of Business, Energy and Industry Strategy, $247,000. Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, we have actually brought down their raise substantially this year, but we need an additional allocation, so that will be $247,000. Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, $229,000. United Nations Environmental Program, $265,000, $266,000. And UE Economic Course Campus, $979,000, for a total of $2.3 million. So in spite of what we're presenting here, we'll still have a shortfall of close to $1 million, again, depending on when the invoices come in. On the Program 156, a further $3 million is required to allow for the continuation of the access service on island, and this will be facilitated through the current fiscal space. Vote 20, let me go back to Program 156. There are questions which have been asked about the ferry and subsidies. This is where those funds will reside, on the Program 156 access, and this is as much as we can afford at this particular time. Ministry of Finance and Economic Management, Program 206 MCRS. An additional sum of $2 million is provided through the fiscal space to cover a requirement for revenue refunds. There is currently a backlog of payments to be processed, and this will allow MCRS to decrease this backlog significantly. There are persons who have overpaid taxes, having done their returns, but they have not been able to get their money back. So we're allocating $2 million so that they can get their money back, and hopefully on time for Christmas. Ministry of Building, Utilities, Infrastructure, Labor and Transportation, an amount of $2 million is required to cover maintenance and equipment costs on the island. Bill covered costs associated with the cleanup of the island early this year during the series of flooding. And that's the one which we had discussed earlier. So this is partially giving them back money which they had spent, so they can now go on and do their maintenance work. These funds will help for the continuation of their scheduled works while acquiring additional critical equipment for the ministry. Program 351, $1.8 million to cover scheduling maintenance cost, whereas Program 352 is we're seeking approval of expenditure of $220,000 on the maintenance services to cover cost of critical equipment and services being provided by BILTI and by extension the Government of Montserrat. Ministry of Education, an amount of $156,000 is required to initiate the commencement of the school meals breakfast program, and this will be facilitated through the annual maintenance program. The initiative at the Montserrat Secondary School would provide a healthy breakfast option on the school compound for many students who are not able to have breakfast before they come to school. Deferring the implementation of this would mean that hunger being experienced to students will continue, resulting in a number of them being able to pay attention in class, particularly. A hungry child cannot learn effectively, and this program will be introduced. Clearly, the Ministry of Education is seeking additional funding for some immediate works, and this is something which we'll consider outside of the supplementary appropriation bill. Under the development votes, we're seeking to have an approval of $26.9 million under the development votes. The following projects were provided for on the Development Fund Warrant number 3 and Development Fund Reallocation Warrant number 1 for financial year 2025-2026, and seek to gain the approval of this Honourable House to approve the additional expenditure of $19 million under the Critical and Life Safety Equipment Project for the Component Green Energy Transformation Transitioning Program. These funds were approved by the FCDO and covers a number of objectives to include some of the following: expanding renewable energy capacity and reduce dependence on diesel generation. This includes the development of a solar, voltaic, and battery storage system to directly support national baseload reduction and energy security. Improving the system stability and storage through the solar PV and BESS infrastructure, and this is the one at Lookout, which includes the evaluation of and procurement of goods and services for the repair of the system, which is a 750 kilowatt system, as I said, in Lookout. So we're trying to correct whatever issues they have. Finalize and operationalize a strategic plan and regulatory framework, which includes finalization of a strategic energy transition plan, legal, financial, and institutional frameworks, regulatory design, including development of an electricity regulator model. Build institutional and human support and boosting their capacity and boosting outreach and awareness programs. clearly we have a major issue in terms of the outreach program. And this is for a sustainable energy future, which includes stakeholder engagement and capacity building for public officers, energy efficiency campaigns and public awareness, school outreach and community education, and visibility for the UK-funded program, for this UK-funded program. Enable tariff and utility reform that supports affordability and investment. Now, we have not had a tariff reform for many, many years, and we need, now that we're going more renewable, we have to look at a tariff reform. I'm making no promises in terms of where the tariffs will end up. Increase the MUL 1 megawatt transmission and distribution network resiliency in the 3 highest fault areas. And these fault areas are principally on the northern feeder line, where pretty much every outage that takes place is as a result of the lines not being up to capacity. And when the lines are not up to capacity and they have not been upgraded since this entire population have moved north, we now need to upgrade those lines. And additionally, we're looking at undergrounding or putting those lines underground, because the salt on the lines, especially in Lookout and Casby, impacts the feedback coming from the system to the power plant to shut it down. Let me also add that most of the electrical outages have not been as a result of problems at the generating plant. It has been as a result of issues on the lines on the northern feeder. We need also to resolve and improve the microgrid capabilities of the Lookout solar facility. Again, that will reduce the energy requirements once we get that fixed and we can get that power back to the power plant. Madam Speaker, I'm also seeking the approval of this Honourable House for the additional expenditure of $2 million under the Cultural Centre Upgrade project to allow for the completion of the project in line with the approved scope. These funds approved by the FCDO will allow renovation activities that cater to a more fit-for-purpose accommodation, both for the Legislative Assembly and also for the public who use that facility. The project consists of 9 work packages: roof repairs, tiling repairs, electrical repairs, plumbing, doors and windows, replacement of the sound system, and other ancillary works. With most returned and with an evaluated panel to allow the commencement of work, the tenders have been submitted, evaluated, so we can soon commence work. Some minor work has already started, but the main works will soon start happening in full. This project is scheduled to be completed by the end of March 2026. Hence, the approval of these funds is necessary. To approve the additional expenditure of $344,000 under the PMO capability project, these funds approved through FCDO will support the human resources behind the hospital project, specifically the hospital project manager health and transformation, and project officer health information systems. We're also seeking $1 million from the food security project, and you're going to see that happening twice. We're just simply moving money from one line item to another line item. So both D and C is for the opening of expenditure of $1 million reallocated on the Development Fund reallocation number 1 to the Agricultural Development Program. These funds will help to increase production and output access and output across the agricultural sector, including fisheries, deriving main benefits to increase production of various crops and fish. This will also include an ice machine for the preservation of fish for the fisher folk, improve access to farms through road improvement, extensions of current roadway, and the fencing of compound for those who fall under the CARICOM greenhouse project, along with an element for clearing of farm lots, some of which I've already spent already. Now, DF would look a little funny because we're seeking to approve an additional expenditure of $100 under the Social Housing Corrective Maintenance Project. In order to spend money, you need to have the exact allocation. So this is simply to increase it by $100 so that we can allocate the full $214,000 under the Drummond's Phase 1 infrastructure project, reallocated from Social Housing Corrective Maintenance Project. To approve the opening and expenditure of $32,000 under the support to the Montserrat Weather Station project. These funds are provided by the Catastrophic Risk Insurance Scheme to assist in the strengthening of Montserrat's provision of weather data through its network of automated weather stations. The automated weather stations will improve Montserrat weather reporting infrastructure and create a data collection network to provide a more comprehensive rainfall data coverage for Montserrat. And the question was asked, why did we not get CRIF funds before when we had the heavy rains? We were estimating the amount of rainfall that fell. So once we have the weather stations, we'll be in a position to provide that information to CRIF, and that may facilitate quicker drawdown. We're also seeking to approve an additional expenditure of $5.5 million under the Health Redevelopment Project. These funds form a part of the overall project's budget approved by the FCDO, but were not passed with the annual budget. As work has progressed to a significant level, these funds are required to ensure that momentum is not lost before the end of the year. Progress achieved at the end of the second quarter includes the completion of excavation and 95% completion of the foundation works. So, Madam Speaker, I commend this bill to this Honourable House for its second reading.
I recognize the Honourable Minister of Build.
Madam Speaker, I stand to support the second reading of the appropriation bill as presented by the Honourable Minister of Finance.
Are you withholding your presentation or you're making it now?
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity. Madam Speaker, I will be brief. The explanatory notes are very good in my view. I just want to say I stand with the bill. Safeguarding has been a long road for us, and we're finally going to get the hub. So I definitely support the safeguarding of our young people, and Madam Speaker, others as well. During court proceedings, it's very difficult, Madam Speaker, for young persons to come and give evidence in court. And from what I know with the Safeguarding Hub, they will have facilities for which persons can give, that is the young persons, can give their evidence virtually and not actually appear in court. So I support all that is required to make this happen. Further, Madam Speaker, for grants and contributions, I definitely support that. And since I'm also strong supporter still of the court, I know it's not here, Madam Speaker, but I want us to seriously consider a project with respect to our court records. Our books, our date, birth, and marriages are at risk. I've been singing that tune for years, and nothing seems to be happening. Perhaps the registrar may need some support in getting that moving. One day, it may be myself or someone else, and we go to the court to have our birth certificate, marriage certificate, a letter is missing, a numeral is missing, and we're going to be in some serious problems, especially if the baptismal or marriage certificates are not available in the court. So I definitely stand with a contribution for the court, but I want to advocate strongly for the justice system and also, Madam, our record system. Of course, Madam Speaker, Vote 35, Ministry of Building, Utilities, Infrastructure, Labor and Transportation, the $2 million. How could I say no? Madam Speaker, I'm grateful for the approval to get the work moving, and the critical infrastructure is what they call a patching unit that keeps the bitumen warm, and a roller, which I suppose, I don't know if it's the same roller that some other persons are laying claim to next to me. But we, I'm just teasing my honorable colleague here, Madam Speaker, that is necessary, and I thank the Honorable Premier for supporting this. Ministry of Education, Madam Speaker, I want to support this school meals breakfast program. It was in existence at the school. Mrs. Hogan attempted, Madam Speaker, to meet this gap, and certain things happened which I will not go over, and I know how important it is. Sometimes I speak to the children and they say, "Ma'am, we have to leave very early, so we don't have that opportunity to eat." In addition, the struggle is real for many parents, and so without any hesitation, Madam Speaker, I am supporting this. It also would help to provide work for persons, be they male or female. The Green Energy Transition Program, I've already spoken about that this morning, so I would not elongate this discussion, but I am truly grateful. It is important that the monies are available, because getting equipment, items, or services into Montserrat is quite difficult at times, and that retards the advancement of projects, and we have a very hard end date of March 26, 2026. It is therefore important that we advance that. Social housing corrective measures, it's very small. Food security, we're definitely supporting the Honorable Minister and the funds that are allocated for doing this. We also want to support the advancement, Madam Speaker, of the corrective measure maintenance project. I myself have seen what is happening. It was only last week, not this Sunday, but the Sunday before, that I visited a home, and the conditions of that home was deplorable, to say the least. The occupants, Madam Speaker, they're in no position to help themselves, but I know they would receive some help. While we were on the campaign trail, we also saw quite a lot of this, and so it's very important that the government provide or assist to those who are in need decent conditions for which our people can live with their families, and also to provide for their protection. With respect, Madam Speaker, the weather station, we know what is happening these days with hurricanes, climate change, and this money, Madam Speaker, is supported by CRIF, and is to assist in the strengthening of the Montserrat provision of weather data through its network of automatic weather conditions. And so, Madam Speaker, without further ado, I support this bill, and I second the motion for it to be read a second time.
Any other? I recognize the Honorable Leader of the Opposition. Honorable Minister, could you take your mic off, please?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise in support of this bill, but not before or without raising certain or highlighting certain observations, raising certain concerns, and also making a few recommendations. Madam Speaker, Vote 5, Royal Montserrat Police Service, 1,377,200. Indeed, a positive continued support for the multi-agency safeguarding hub and leadership training is commendable. Concern, Madam Speaker, heavy reliance on UK funding and consultants, especially consultants, raises questions about local capacity building and sustainability. In terms of the 613,700, Madam Speaker, it would be good and useful to know what portion is for digital infrastructure versus non-essential purchases. I think on the firearm and soundproofing equipment, the Premier attempted to give some clarity. Under the same vote, Madam Speaker, I feel it should be justified within a clear national security or safeguarding framework, not conflated with social protection projects. Madam Speaker, we cannot continue to import expensive expertise and equipment without a local capacity building exit strategy. Yes, Madam Speaker, this is important, and also who is auditing deliverables and value for money under the MASH project. Madam Speaker, on the vote 15, Office of the Premier, 5 million. There's some 2 million for the grants, which initially in my notes said there was no transparency, but in the Premier's presentation, he did provide a breakdown as to what the grants were for. So I'll move on to the access part of it. The access subsidy continues to absorb millions yearly, Madam Speaker, dare I say, without a published access policy strategy, which I hope would be in place pretty soon, Madam Speaker. There's also no financial performance reports. So, Madam Speaker, I do stress that in the future that these would be forthcoming. On the vote 20, Ministry of Finance, 2 million. Madam Speaker, it's always welcoming when funds are provided to allow for the payments or refunds of income tax. My question on this, Madam Speaker, however, is why not, or was there no forecast in terms of the amount of refunds that would be paid out, and why not that was not budgeted for at the beginning of the financial year as opposed to now? Staying this long, Madam Speaker, has caused a backlog, and of course it means that citizens and businesses are awaiting refunds, bearing the cost of inefficiencies. And Madam Speaker, I would like to see efficient delivery, and I know that the department will say if they have the funds up front, then they will be able to execute efficiently. Madam Speaker, this is so because I believe that the business community and the people deserves a refund mechanism that works. On the vote 35, Ministry of Building, Utilities, Infrastructure, Labour and Transport. Madam Speaker, I understand that when you do not have certain established funds, that you must go to some department. Whenever we have any floods or strong winds, storms, it's always built, or as you know it, PWD who has to sacrifice, Madam Speaker, funding to allow for remedial works to take place. But, Madam Speaker, at the same time, it means that they cannot continue with their scheduled timelines in terms of their maintenance. And that is why, Madam Speaker, I continue to insist on a climate adaptation reserve, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, a disaster contingency fund could avoid the need to remove money from built and other departments and allows them to continue with their work as scheduled at the beginning of the year. Madam Speaker, on vote 40, Ministry of Education, we welcome the school breakfast program. It's a worthwhile social investment. Madam Speaker, we just hope that this is not a one-off token and that, Madam Speaker, it will be an ongoing program in the future. Madam Speaker, recommendation is to integrate it within a comprehensive school nutrition policy with local agricultural linkages. Madam Speaker, in terms of green energy transition, 19,087,000. Madam Speaker, it's always positive when you have additional money for critical investment in renewable energy and energy security. Madam Speaker, one concern I have, however, is for years, Madam Speaker, over government, maybe 3-4 governments, Madam Speaker, we have always heard the push from every government and the promise to deliver on the geothermal generation plant. Madam Speaker, we noticed despite the 5 million plus that was contributed by the FCDO, Madam Speaker, for energy transition, no aspect of it was assigned to the geothermal plant, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, I guess that the FCDO is also guilty of a lot of old talk, Madam Speaker, and no solution to date. Madam Speaker, I therefore ask, Madam Speaker, where and when will we actually see funding within the budget to move forward with geothermal generation plant? Madam Speaker, I noticed that there might be a little excitement about some steams going up in the air, Madam Speaker, but we had that same excitement the previous government that just left. And again, so Madam Speaker, while it's good to have excitement, we really need and the people deserve something tangible in terms of geothermal production. Madam Speaker, in terms of the cultural center upgrade, 1,075,200, I seek some clarification, Madam Speaker, from the Honourable Premier, whether, first of all, what's the total budgeted amount for the upgrade project, and whether or not this 1,075,200, is that the budgeted amount of this additional money that you're asking for? So if you could provide that clarification when you get a chance to speak or wrap up the total budgeted amount, if you have it to hand, and what does the 1,075,200 represent? Madam Speaker, in terms of the PMO capability and hospital project, 5.5,111,100. Madam Speaker, my concern is that the project staffing funded through FCDO but not integrated into the civil service establishment. And I tell you why. It creates institutional fragility. So, Madam Speaker, I dare take the opportunity to make a recommendation to establish a succession plan to ensure skills transfer and long-term ownership. Madam Speaker, as I move to the agriculture, 2 million is a positive. Increased production and support for fisheries and greenhouses are welcome. Concern, Madam Speaker, and the Minister could, if he feels necessary, could give clarification. But my concern, Madam Speaker, is the reallocation funds from food security project may undercut that program original intent. Madam Speaker, in terms of accountability, I believe there's a need for a transparent result matrix, production targets, beneficiary numbers, and gender equity inclusion. Yes, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in terms of the weather station, my recommendation, if it's not already the case, is that it ensure data integration with regional CARICOM and OECS climate platforms for maximum value. Madam Speaker, my recommendations include the support, Madam Speaker, for votes, example, education, meals, agriculture, development, but with conditions for transparency and performance reporting. 2, demand quarterly performance reports for all supplementary funded projects. And 3, insist on creation of a disaster contingency fund to prevent ad hoc maintenance bailouts and having to deprive ministries of their fund and avoiding or preventing them from moving forward with their scheduled work. Madam Speaker, on this note, Madam Speaker, I rest.
Do we move on, or do we ask the Honorable Premier to wrap up? Well, maybe we won't have any other interventions. So, Honorable Premier, would you like to wrap up, please? I recognize the Honorable Minister of Agriculture.
Sorry about that, Madam Speaker, but because the Honourable Leader of Opposition just asked me to explain, I'll just explain. So the $1 million was not taken from a food security project. The $1 million was donated by the ECCB for a food security project. So as the supplementary appropriation works, we're just appropriating that money into a project that the ministry has, which is the Agricultural Development Program. So it's not moving from one project to the other. It was just given as a food security project from the ECCB. And as the supplementary appropriation bill, as I said, it works, is that we're just appropriating that money into the ministry. So just a clarification, Madam Speaker, and
Thank you. I recognize the Honorable Premier.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Very briefly, in response to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, thank you very much for your observations. Some of them I can explain, others we'll feed back and take them on board, because some of them are not necessarily included here. As it relates to access, there's an access strategy and policy which is being developed. Okay? We have the access strategy, but we're now seeking to complete the access policy. Okay? It's taking a bit of time given limitations in terms of resource. Refunds of taxes and the inefficiencies, unfortunately, and I don't like to do this, but unfortunately, it's an inefficiency which was inherited. Within the 2025-26 budget, we had approved funds in that budget, but we did not have the fiscal space at the time of the budget, given the competing priorities. Okay, so they've paid out what had been allocated. Now we have additional fiscal space. We're seeking to pay out more persons. Okay, but we're tightening up on the system, and hopefully you will see the rolling out of that tightening up of the system, especially through digitization of the MCRs. The breakfast program, as stated, is an ongoing program. So it's not just being funded for this year. We're doing the evaluation. Of course, we have to always do evaluations, but the indication is we will be doing it continuing into the next year and the next year. The improvements in that system will take place on the basis of lessons learned. Resilient infrastructure, it does include the testing of wells. And yes, sometimes we figure we're doing things over and over and over again. The Oxford Institute is here with us, along with JRG, to do two things. JRG is dealing with determining whether or not the wells have the capacity which we're hoping for. So that's one. Two, the Oxford team will look at the chemical analysis of those wells. Yes, there seems to have been talk that under previous administration it was done. It was not completed because the well flowing did not take place as required. We have now had the well flowing, and therefore they are currently doing the testing of the components of the well. You would hear from time to time that the wells have elements that can make Montserrat rich. We have to test and find out if in fact we do have those elements and whether or not we have them in mineable quantities. And I'll explain. It may take you 100 units of currency to mine a particular product, but then you can only sell it for 50 units of currency. So yes, you may have it, but is it in, are those elements in sufficient quantities for them to be economically viable? And this is part of what is being done by the Oxford Institute. But whilst they're here, they're also testing the water systems. I think today they should have gone to each of the spring sources to test the water. They've done runway gut already. They're testing the seawater. They're testing hot water pond. So it's a comprehensive test which is being done. And the reason why we need to have this upgraded and updated testing is that the last information on these wells was in 2014. So we now need to ensure that 11, 12 years later, that in fact what was there is actually there. Now I know some persons are saying, oh, the pipes are rusted. Yes, the pipes will be rusted because what you're getting from the wells is actually salt water. Okay, so the wells are actually pulling water from the sea, and it is not fresh water. And that has already been determined. So therefore, any generating plant which we are likely to have must be robust enough so that the salt water does not create silica buildup within those plants. And yes, we have been having discussions both with FCDO, but more importantly with private sector interest in terms of developing those two wells along with possibility of other wells. Okay, so that is under consideration, and we're actually awaiting proposals from a couple of those potential investors. To take it a bit further, we actually have a company engaged who are looking at the ash to determine what can we do with the ash in terms of its utilization. Now that will do two things for us. One, it will enable us to clean up the ash in Cork Hill, Foxes Bay, Richmond Hill, etc. So persons can then have their properties cleaned at somebody else's cost. They will also require additional power, and therefore if they drill the wells, the additional wells, for the additional power which they require, we will have two things. We should be in a position to get free power from them without actually making the investment ourselves. Do a little research on the Panama Canal and you'll understand what I'm talking about there. The hospital project provides for skills transfer. Yes, we have to hire an experienced project manager. It's a $100 million project, and therefore we can't afford to make mistakes as had happened on the port project. So therefore, we are putting in place the technical capacity to ensure that the project is delivered. From the Ministry of Health standpoint, the minister is leading on the equipment, and I think there's an equipment allocation which they will also have for them to start buying the initial set of equipment for the hospital. The IT person on the hospital project, which is one of the three, is a Montserrat who has come back from the United Kingdom to work with us on that project. So there is in fact transfer of skills, and there is a building person who is also working along with the project manager to build his capacity. So yes, we are fully aware of that, and we have taken those into consideration. In terms of the police who audits, it's British funds, they will audit, and their audit tends to be more robust than our audit. The transfer of skills, no, let me go back to the audit. However, in spite of the fact that it's British funds and it is being approved under the Legislative Assembly, then our Auditor General has a right to audit that. And this is much unlike what Honorable Romeo was asking about, funds which did not come through the Legislative Assembly but are being spent directly by the British government to host the prisoner here. So there's a slight distinction, because once it's approved in the Legislative Assembly, the Auditor General has all right to audit the use of those funds. The transfer of skills, we must also recognize that the transfer of skills, that is part of what is being paid for, to upgrade the skills of senior management within the police service. Not the commissioner, not the deputy commissioner, but the others at the lower ranks, so that in time they will be in a position to take over and localize the police service again. Localize here meaning having our regional persons along with our local persons again taking over the management of the police service. So that is one of the objectives here. So, Madam Speaker, and I trust I've responded sufficiently to your queries, but we will keep you informed, we will keep the House informed as to what we're doing here. The additional sum coming from HMG has time limits on it, and it includes, Mull has no digger derricks, for example. They have no lift trucks, and those are being procured under the system as well. The flowing of the wells, the purchasing of new equipment, those are also being paid for under that, the Resilient Energy Project. And I think one of the things, as an electrician, you'll understand, if you develop the solar farm in Lookout, but the lines are not upgraded, it's pointless, because the problem is with the lines. So therefore, we have to also upgrade the lines and put them on the ground. And that too is being facilitated, along with replacing some of our leaking water lines. Palm Loop is almost finished. After that, they'll go to Lookout, and then there's one in Yellow Hill area there, which will also be undergrounded. Okay, so it's a comprehensive program. We're asking them to work flat out to ensure they can meet the deadlines, and I am confident that when they report tomorrow, they will indicate that they, in fact, can meet the deadlines. So, Madam Speaker, I do commend this bill to this Honourable House for its second reading.
Thank you, Honourable Premier. It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Supplementary Appropriation 2025 number 2 bill, that it be read a second time. All those in favor say aye. Those against, nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The bill will be read a second time.
Supplementary Appropriation 2025 number 2 bill.
The bill has been read a second time, and therefore the Assembly will now proceed into committee to consider the bill in further detail. So we will commence with the supply vote summary, and we'll deal with the affected votes, starting with the police vote 5. Authorized estimate, $8,494,800. Supplemented amount, $1,377,200 for a revised estimate of $9,872,000. And that should stand as part of the schedule. All those in favor, say aye. Those against, nay. I recognize the Honorable Mulcair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do believe that a new document was circulated, so it should not be 985.7. It should be 1,377,200.
Yeah, that was changed.
Recognize the Honorable Financial Secretary.
Apologies, Madam Chair. Honorable Mulcair, the error was on the explanatory notes only. The bill, the figure in the bill was correct. So the figure in the bill is 1,377,200. Yeah. The Madam Speaker quoted the total, which is now 9,872,000. Yes.
So the error was on the first
Explanatory
detail.
note, yes. So
So what is actually in here
is correct.
is correct.
Yes. So
Right.
you were correct.
Okay. So we'll do that over. Vote 5, please. Authorized estimate of $8,494,800 with a supplemented amount of $1,377,200 for a revised estimate of $9,872,000. That should stand as part of the schedule. All those in favor, say aye. Those against, nay. The ayes have it. Police, vote 5. In the supplemented, in the revised amount of $9,782,000 now stand as part of the schedule. Vote 15, Office of the Premier, having an authorized estimate of $11,382,200, supplemented by $5 million for a revised estimate of $16,382,200 should stand as part of the schedule. Those in favor, say aye. Those against, nay. The ayes have it. Vote 15, Office of the Premier, $16,382,200 now stand as part of the schedule. Vote 20, Ministry of Finance and Economic Management. Authorized estimate, $47,055,600, supplemented with $2 million for a revised estimate of $49,055,600 should stand as part of the schedule. Those in favor, say aye. Those against, nay. The ayes have it. Vote 20, Ministry of Finance and Economic Management, an amount of $49,055,600 now stand as part of the schedule. Vote 35, Ministry of Building, Utilities, Infrastructure, Labor and Transportation, and Ecclesiastical Affairs, authorized estimate $14,095,600, supplemented amount $2 million, Revised estimate $16,095,600 should stand as part of the schedule. Those in favor say aye. Those against, nay. The ayes have it. Vote 35, built for $16,095,600 now stand as part of the schedule. Vote 40, Ministry of Education. Authorized estimate $10,082,300, supplemented by $156,300. Revised estimate $10,238,600 should stand as part of the schedule. Those in favor say aye. Those against, nay. The ayes have it. Vote 40, Ministry of Education, in the amount of $10,238,600 now stand as part of the schedule. The total supply vote, authorized estimate, $175,883,300, supplemented with $10,533,500, revised estimate of $186,416,800. And the question is that the $10,533,500 should, the supplemented amount, should stand as part of the schedule. Those in favor say aye. Those against, nay. The ayes have it. The total supply vote supplement of $10,533,500 now stand as part of the schedule. We move on to the Development Fund vote summary. Vote 20. Ministry of Finance and Economic Management, authorized estimate $35,436,500, supplemented by $20,376,300. Revised estimate $55,812,800 should stand as part of the schedule. Those in favor say aye. Those against, nay. The ayes have it. Vote 20, Ministry of Finance and Economic Management, in the amount of $55,812,800 now stand as part of the schedule. Vote 30, Ministry of Agriculture, Lands, Housing, Environment, Youth Affairs and Sports, authorized estimate $4,413,500, supplemented by $1,100,000 for a revised estimate of $5,413,600 should stand as part of the schedule. Those in favor say aye. Those against, nay. The ayes have it. Vote 30, Ministry of Agriculture, Lands, Housing, Environment, Youth Affairs and Sports, in the amount of $5,413,600 now stand as part of the schedule. Vote 35, Ministry of Built, authorized estimate $35,906,900, supplemented by $32,200. Revised estimate of $35,939,100 should stand as part of the schedule. Those in favor say aye. Those against, nay. The ayes have it. Vote 35, Ministry of Built, in the amount of $35,939,100 now stand as part of the schedule. And finally, vote 45, Ministry of Health and Social Services, authorized estimate $51,760,700, supplemented by $5,500,000 for a revised estimate of $57,260,700 should stand as part of the schedule. Those in favor say aye. Those against, nay. The ayes have it. Vote 45, Ministry of Health and Social Services, in the amount of $57,260,700 now stand as part of the schedule. The Development Fund vote authorized estimate of $137,125,200, supplemented by $26,908,600, revised estimate of $164,034,800. The question is that the supplemented amount of $26,908,600 should stand as part of the schedule. Those in favor say aye. Those against, nay. The ayes have it. The Development Fund vote supplement of $26,908,600 now stand as part of the schedule. We move on to the summary. And the question, therefore, is that the supply vote supplement of $10,533,500 plus the Development Fund vote supplement of $26,908,600 for a total supplementary amount of $37,442,100 should stand as part of the schedule. Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The total supplemented amount of $37,442,100 now stand as part of the schedule. And the further question is that the schedule should stand as part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those against nay. The ayes have it. The schedule now stand as part of the bill. Clauses 1 to 3. The question is that clauses 1 to 3 should stand as part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those against nay. The ayes have it. Clauses 1 to 3 now stand as part of the bill. Enacting clause and long title. The question is that the enacting clause and long title should stand as part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those against nay. The ayes have it. The enacting clause and long title now stand as part of the bill. And finally, the question is that the bill should be reported to the Assembly. Those in favor say aye. Those against nay. The ayes have it, and therefore the bill will be reported to the Assembly. The Assembly will now resume its sitting. I recognize the Honorable Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to report to you that the Supplementary Appropriation Number 2 Bill of 2025 has passed through the committee stage of this Honourable House and has been approved. And therefore, Madam Speaker, I'm seeking your concurrence for the suspension of the appropriate standing order to facilitate a third reading of this bill.
Do we have a seconder for the suspension? I recognize the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Speaker, I do rise to support the suspension of the appropriate procedures to allow for the second and third reading of the bill.
So it has been moved and seconded that standing order number 53 be suspended to allow for the third reading of the Supplementary Appropriation 2025 number 2 bill. All those in favor say aye. Those against nay. The ayes have it. Standing order number 53 has been accordingly suspended. So therefore, it was moved that the bill, shortly entitled Supplementary Appropriation 2025 number 2 bill, be read a third time and passed in this honorable House. Those in favor say aye. Those against, nay. The ayes have it. The bill will now be read a third time.
Supplementary Appropriation 2025 Number 2 Bill.
The bill, Supplementary Appropriation 2025 Number 2 Bill, has been read a third time and is accordingly passed. I recognize the Honorable Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to move a motion for the introduction and first reading of the bill shortly entitled Elections Amendment Bill 2025.
I recognize the Honorable Financial Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to second the motion for the introduction and first reading of the bill shortly entitled Election Amendment Bill 2025.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Elections Amendment Bill 2025 be read a first time. Those in favor say aye. Those against, nay. I think the ayes have it. The bill will be read a first time.
Elections Amendment Bill 2025.
I recognize the Honorable Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to move a motion for the introduction and first reading of the bill shortly entitled Police Amendment Bill 2025. Thank you.
I recognize the Honorable Financial Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to second the motion for the introduction and first reading of the bill shortly entitled Police Amendment Bill 2025.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Police Amendment Bill 2025 should be read a first time. Those in favor say aye. Those against, nay. The ayes have it. The bill will be read a first time.
Police Amendment Bill 2025. Other business, adjournment.
I recognize the Honorable Premier.
Madam Speaker, I crave your indulgence to move a motion for the adjournment of this Honorable House sine die.
I recognize the Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Well,
Madam Speaker, I rise to second the motion of the adjournment of the House and to make a submission. Madam Speaker, with your permission. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it's been 1 year that have passed since the general elections. As the opposition, the People's Democratic Movement remains steadfast in our commitment to hold this government accountable while continuing to offer practical solutions that can improve the livelihoods of our people, including everyone that call Montserrat their home, and to secure a better future for our country. 1 year after the general elections, the reality for too many families and businesses is hardship and disappointment. Yes, some may be doing okay, but the question is, what about the majority of persons who are still facing hardship without solutions? Small businesses remain under pressure, with no real obvious plan to revive the economy, at least not one I'm aware of. It would take a comprehensive strategic program in addition to the existing loans that have been rolled out. So, Madam Speaker, in other words, loans alone or loans by itself won't solve the existing problems. Why is there no relief package for struggling businesses or residents? Instead, This government, Madam Speaker, continues to push significant funds that can revive this economy into a port project. Yes, we support the completion of the port, but to date, Madam Speaker, the project has achieved no major targets and delivered no value for money, despite the huge sums already spent. Reports indicate the project value at over 107 million, yet after all the funding and time expended into this project, there is still no confidence it will meet its recent completion date and no visible progress to justify the investment. Despite many promises of a restart of the port, no signs of a restart as I speak. Madam Speaker, additionally, how can the project restart without the government, after putting in more money, make sure the construction company make good, and I repeat, make good on payments for local business entities and people, Madam Speaker, that are still waiting payments? Madam Speaker, there were payments made recently to some, but there are still outstanding payments for others. Madam Speaker, transparency is not optional when public funds are involved. This government must inform the country on expenditure details, contractor reports, and a new realistic completion timeline. Madam Speaker, I stress the word realistic. Let me remind this government they cannot no longer blame the previous MCAP government, Madam Speaker. They must now take ownership. Yes, Madam Speaker, ownership as government is continuous, and to remind them that they have signed a new contract. Madam Speaker, while money continues to sink into the port, Madam Speaker, businesses are drowning. Businesses and households across the country, Madam Speaker, are still facing hardship, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Montserrat continue to face frequent power outages and load shedding, despite promises to fix the problem, Madam Speaker, within as little as 30 days. Madam Speaker, domestic electricity rates remain around US 49 cents per kilowatt hour, with no discounts on monthly bills, while outages continue to cost families and businesses dearly in damaged equipment and loss of business earnings. Neither MUL or government has refunded or paid for the damaged equipment, nor do I think, Madam Speaker, any of the two entities intend to do so. What we need is a genuine energy transition plan, not more Band-Aid solutions. The government must prioritize renewable energy for buildings, provide incentives for households to go solar, and swiftly reinstate the white goods concessionary program to support citizens as they try to repurchase lost, costly equipment. I acknowledge, Madam Speaker, adjustments made to import duty and freight calculations in an effort to reduce costs, but the cost of living continues to climb. The price of essentials has risen nearly 25 to 30% since 2020. Madam Speaker, this adjustment of import and freight calculations, as well-meaning as it is, did not have the much-needed impact as the goods remain at a high cost, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I realize that this is beyond the local constraints and beyond the local remit or even the remit of the government. But the reality, Madam Speaker, is that we need a more comprehensive program in order to address this issue. Madam Speaker, what this country needs is a structured cost of living relief plan built on concessions that have direct impact on not just freight, but on gas prices, essential goods, better support for parents with children, support for public transport, and a focused drive towards local production and food security. Madam Speaker, our people are asking for tangible results, not old talk and fancy promises. Madam Speaker, a government study showed that a livable salary for Montserrat is around $2,485. Madam Speaker, that works out to about $14.35 per hour. Yet, knowingly, this government has not prioritized the need for a minimum wage. I think it's long in coming, but crawling, Madam Speaker, slowly. Many hardworking individuals are still taking home less than $500 a week, incapable of making ends meet and navigating the effects of inflation, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, within government, some employees remain on contract without gratuity payments. This does help, Madam Speaker, in terms of trying to come to grips with the high cost of living. Overtime is still taxed, and on major projects, workers are being paid without Montserrat's accepted wage rate, while companies with government contracts for major capital projects import the bulk of building materials instead of supporting local merchants. To help alleviate the unemployment in Montserrat, a more efficient and effective recruitment system is required to fill the 100+ vacancies in government. Madam Speaker, if the government has little influence on private sector employment, I'm sure, Madam Speaker, they can do something, push to have the 100+ vacancies within government itself filled. Madam Speaker, the honeymoon period is over. It's time to act. Enacting demands that government approve and implement a minimum wage immediately with annual cost of living reviews. Going forward, address the issue of contracts without gratuity. Pay gratuities and arrears owed to contract workers. Review and reform the taxation of overtime. Fill, once again, and I reiterate, the many vacancies in government. Enforce, Madam Speaker, fair labor standards on all major projects. A fair day's pay for a fair day's work should not be up for debate. Madam Speaker, if we are serious about transforming this economy, we must confront access head-on. The return of the Twin Otter services, advocated for many years by the opposition, is welcome, Madam Speaker. This is simply not enough, and the work must continue. We must open up more gateways and immediately initiate plans for night landing. Madam Speaker, any forward-thinking government must see the need and advance into planning for a new purpose-built airport capable of connecting us directly to regional and international markets. This must be done simultaneously while finding creative ways to maximize use of our current airport. Madam Speaker, at the very least, feasibility study, Madam Speaker, wind and feasibility studies at previously proposed potential airport sites should resume with intent. Instead, we see delays and uncertainty while, Madam Speaker, our neighbors push forward access as top priority. Connectivity is the backbone of investment, tourism, and trade. Without it, growth will always stall. Our tourism product, including the unique buried city, remains underdeveloped, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I think one speaker on the government side even mentioned that, Madam Speaker. The tourism and other visitor-engaging sectors like culture and sports continues to be grossly underfunded. Madam Speaker, not only under this government, but under governments before, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it's time for change. It's time for us to provide more resources for culture, sports, and tourism, Madam Speaker. This administration must show greater support for these sectors. We still lack upgraded accommodations to attract long-stay visitors with little or no emphasis placed on residential tourism. Our agriculture sector faces logistic challenges that make exports difficult and discourage local production, which remains, Madam Speaker, under 10% contributory to food supplies. We must expand markets within the OECS and CARICOM and restore the ferry service as a reliable transport link for goods, sports teams, and ordinary travels, not just for carrying passengers, but to transport, Madam Speaker, locally produced, Madam Speaker, products, Madam Speaker, at reasonable, affordable rates. Madam Speaker, Montserrat needs policies and incentives that make it easy to invest, innovate, and employ. We cannot continue to keep depending on grants and budgetary aid. We need a functioning economy that creates jobs and generates real growth. Madam Speaker, the world is moving fast towards artificial intelligence and digital industries, yet Montserrat, with perhaps the most suitable size population for adaptations, lag behind. We need targeted skills training, modern scholarships, and support mechanisms for our ICT development plan. Retirees should not be occupying roles that can prepare young professionals for the future. Madam Speaker, let us invest in our youth, not recycle our challenges. Protecting our environment must remain central to development. Sustainable planning, responsible construction, and renewable energy integration must guide every major project, ensuring we leave a viable island for generations to come. This government's failure to present a population retention growth and retention strategy as priority is glaring. Every month that passes without one, we lose more people, our workforce, our creative energy, and our future. A clear, actionable plan must be introduced to attract back our diaspora and encourage newcomers to contribute to our economy. But, Madam Speaker, we must first come up with ways to retain those who we have. Madam Speaker, success in government is about results, not old talk and fanciful promises. Montserrat deserves more than excuses. It deserves execution, and I'm sure the government agrees with this statement. The people of this country are feeling and experiencing severe hardship. This time, Madam Speaker, policies, Madam Speaker, or made-up policies as we go along will not cut it, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the residents of Montserrat, I say to you, stay the course. Yes, residents, stay the course. Your calls for accountability and fairness keeps this democracy alive, and we do appreciate your call, your critique. Madam Speaker, together, let us move beyond retired politics and work for real development, where every resident, regardless of background, has a fair chance to live, work, and prosper right here at home. Madam Speaker, where businesses can strive and be successful. Madam Speaker, if it please you, I shall end.
I recognize the Honorable Montserrat.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to reflect on the period 25th of October 2024 to 10th November 2025, a year of continued hope from our people, but one regrettably marked by slow progress, growing frustration, and an urgent call for action. Madam Speaker, as has been said before, access remains the single most critical barrier to Montserrat's sustainable development. Yet we continue to move at a snail's pace. The port project remains unfinished, delayed, and uncertain. Our airport remains inadequate for safe, reliable, and competitive access. Some argue it is underutilized, but the truth is, it is under-designed. Visitors are unwilling to travel on a small aircraft, and we lose potential investment and tourism as a result. And what of the ferry, Madam Speaker? We were promised a ferry service within 30 days of the Alliance government taking office. Today is 1 year and 18 days, 383 days later, and still no long-term ferry service. We are weeks from the Christmas season and still no confirmation to support travelers or empower the Montserrat Tourism Authority to properly promote our destination. Our people deserve certainty, reliability, and dignity in their travel options. Montserrat needs finished port works, airport expansion, and the return of long-term ferry service, not seasonal guesswork, but a serious and permanent commitment. Madam Speaker, the cost of living continues to crush our people. Salaries remain stagnant while prices climb. The Government of Montserrat Salary Review of November 2021, commissioned by the Office of the Deputy Governor, still sits without meaningful action, despite being presented to the Alliance government as part of Honourable Romeo's resolution calling for increased support to the vulnerable, the working poor, pensioners, public servants, and all those struggling to survive. Our elderly, many living below half of basic nutritional costs, are left dependent on children who are stretched with loans, mortgages, and rising costs. Our low-income earners cannot qualify for mortgages, denying them the dream of owning a piece of Montserrat. Our single mothers are juggling jobs, yet remaining unable to fully provide nutritious meals, stable housing, and meaningful opportunities for their children. Our public servants, the backbone of government, continue to be unpaid and undervalued. To compound this, Madam Speaker, approximately 4 months ago, they received a directive stating that appreciation is no longer possible as the purchase of gifts of any kind for staff is prohibited. Madam Speaker, encouragement is half of laborers' pay. It is deeply demoralizing when workers cannot even be formally honored or appreciated, especially on Workers' Appreciation Day or when an officer retires, not even a plaque or a gift. In March 2022, I received approval to purchase these items for one of my staff who retired after giving 32 years of service, Madam Speaker. In April 2023, I did not receive approval because the Office of the Deputy Governor was hosting a joint retirement reception and award for officers who retired during that period, and that was okay. That staff was honored at the end of 2023 after giving 45 years of service. Furthermore, when a staff member dies, not even a wreath can be bought. That is not governance. That is neglect of duty and people, Madam Speaker. A failure to honor the humanity and dignity of the very people who keep this country running. Madam Speaker, moral and productivity do not grow in environments where appreciation is forbidden and recognition is treated as a luxury rather than a duty. Our people deserve better. Then there's the cost of living. Where is the cost of living allowance for our residents? It is urgently needed. A cost of living allowance is not generosity. It is a necessary stabilizer in a time of economic pressure, when inflation is eating away at household budgets and quality of life. How do we expect families to thrive when wages do not match inflation, essential goods cost more each month, loan and mortgage payments remain fixed, and rents continue to rise? A cost of living allowance will support every household: workers, pensioners, single parents, young professionals, elderly citizens, and persons living with disabilities. It will help bestow dignity and confidence. It will demonstrate that this government sees and hears the struggles of the people and is prepared to act. Madam Speaker, residents should not have to choose between paying their electricity bill or buying nutritious foods, between school supplies for their children and medication for their elderly parents. Our people deserve relief. They deserve breathing room. They deserve a government that puts them first. Madam Speaker, our health services remain constrained by staffing shortages. The truth is clear. We cannot attract and retain qualified health professionals without competitive and dignified salaries and allowances. We must stop accepting mediocrity and build strong, capable institutions that deliver for our people. We continue to see capable citizens acting in roles for years, acting without elevation, only for positions to be advertised or given to favorites instead. Qualified Monstrattians succeed in interviews, yet are denied appointment because someone in power does not like them or prefers a pet. And recently, Madam Speaker, we saw a most troubling example with the Chief Human Resources Officer recruitment. A candidate with proven institutional knowledge and successes was recommended, but the process was squashed. Why? Is it because the candidate would insist that protocols are followed once in position? Or is it because the candidate is prepared to put in the work required to revamp and revitalize the Human Resources Management Unit, which we are in dire need for? Madam Speaker, these practices undermine trust, hinders progress, and drives talent away. Montserrat cannot develop on the basis of favoritism and insecurity. It must rest on merit, fairness, and professionalism. Madam Speaker, population growth is essential to national survival. Yet where are the incentives to retain and attract our brightest, or bring home those who want to return? Recently, government committed nearly 800,000 in scholarships for the 2025-2026 academic year, yet declined to publicly announce our scholars, citing data security. But when the UK announced Montserrat's Shivling Scholar, it was published openly. The public has a right to know who is being supported by public funds. Transparency is not optional. It is foundational to democracy. Madam Speaker, our young people want to invest, want to return, want to build. But where are the incentives? Where is the housing strategy that supports home ownership, repatriation, retention, and return? Instead of pathways to prosperity, too many are met with obstacles, bureaucracy, and silence. Madam Speaker, in the midst of all these pressing national issues, cost of living, salaries, access, health, population decline, housing, We now hear that government is prioritizing the introduction of same-sex marriage legislation so that the UK does not impose it on us. Respectfully, Madam Speaker, leadership means standing up for what we believe and choosing priorities that reflect the needs of our people. The Bermuda case proved that the UK cannot simply impose such legislation, and that constitutional authority resides in the territory. So why the rush? Why the focus there? When Montserrat cries out for food security, jobs, infrastructure, fair opportunities, quality health care, and dignity. Madam Speaker, Montserrat cannot afford distractions or drift. Our people need reliable access, that is, a viable ferry service, a proper airport, and the completion of our port. Cost of living relief and salary adjustments, fair hiring and fair treatment of public servants, strong, transparent institutions, housing and youth empowerment, health services strengthened by competitive salaries and allowances, true opportunities and population growth incentives. Montserrat does not need silence. It needs action, courage, fairness, and heart. I therefore urge this government to refocus, to prioritize the bread and butter issues affecting our people daily, to protect the dignity of our citizens, and to act not with fear, but with purpose and conviction. Madam Speaker, our people matter. Our people deserves nothing less. And Madam Speaker, I crave your indulgence. It has been 1 year since general elections and sworn in as a member of this House. In opposition, standing firm for the people, I thank the people of Montserrat for giving me the honor to serve them. Your strength, your resilience, and your faith in better days fuel my work every single day. I will continue to fight, to question, and to champion the issues that matter, because this seat belongs to the people. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Your mic. Honorable. I recognize the Honorable Rubio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Instead of making a speech or report, for the record, I am sharing several letters written to the UK Secretary of State, Her Excellency the Governor, the British Consulate, the Deputy Prime Minister, and Secretary of Justice, written over the past 2.5 months. Please note that I promised all of the above, that for the sake of transparency and in the spirit of collaboration, I'll be sharing these letters widely with a wide audience. In addition, I'm sharing also a historic settlement that came as a result of one question asked in the Parliament in the UK. And I believe it's important for the record, for elucidation of the members, the power of a question in Parliament and what can help us in the future going forward with regards to negotiating for Montserrat. So I'm sharing this with the entire House. Thank you.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that this Honorable House stand adjourned, sign it aye. All those in favor, say aye. Those against, nay. The ayes have it. This Honorable House now stands adjourned, sign it aye.